by the John Gospel. But Mani really was brilliant and really did have something brilliant to say about all of this. And he attempted to create a religion that would be the primary competitor against Christianity as the great world religion. And he thought the best way to do this would be to create a synthesis of Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Christianity. So he sets out to do this. He may actually have journeyed to India. He was living in the Near East, kind of in the sort of Babylonian culture world at that time, and he may have journeyed to India. The Gospel of Thomas, the one that was recovered, the mystical Gnostic Gospel, comes from the same culture zone that he was living in. So he was picking up these mystical influences. And eventually, he was Persian, though. He was primarily part of the Persian Empire. And eventually they had him crucified because they couldn't tolerate. His religion was really gaining strong adherents, and it was becoming a primary competitor against Zoroastrianism. And he really sort of, as we'll see, sort of reworks the Zoroastrian mythology. And in the beginning, he says, there was this kingdom of light. And there was a sort of god of light living within this kingdom. And then there was a kingdom of darkness down below it. And the two were absolutely separate. So that the Manichaean cosmos moves through three very simple epochs where light and darkness in the beginning are completely separate. In the middle, they're intermixed. And at the end of time, they'll be separate again. So in the beginning, you have light above, darkness below. And the god of light perceives that the god of darkness is jealous of this kingdom of light and is making moves to begin to attack. And so he mentions to his consort Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, that this is going to happen, and she produces forth out of herself an emanation, the Anthropos, the primal man of light, who then puts on an armor of light, a suit of light, and goes down to do battle with these beings, exactly like the Archangel Michael going down to do battle with Satan. So he descends wearing this armor of light down into the realm of darkness to fight these beings, but he loses the fight, and the demons of darkness come and they rip off of his armor, and they eat the armor. So now they've got the light trapped inside of their bodies. And he himself has to be fished out of this kingdom. He's fallen, and his mission has gone badly. Has to be fished out by the Holy Spirit, who descends down, and the actual handshake originated with the Manichaean recognition of this hand that reaches down into the darkness to pull the fallen Anthropos back up to the realm of light. So the Manichaeans developed the handshake as this recognition of that myth, so it comes out of this. And so he comes back up, but meanwhile, down in the kingdom of darkness, what happens is these beings have swallowed these light particles within them. And the Holy Spirit sets about above. They're watching this happen. He sails forth in his moon boat, as it were, and he sort of appears to the male demons as this beautiful woman. And so they masturbate and ejaculate, and their ejaculation and light particles in the Manichaean world is transmitted by way of semen. That becomes important for Augustine, who starts as a Manichaean and says that the reason Christ is separate from everyone else is because he was born of a virgin, and therefore the original sin is not transmitted through semen to Christ. So this becomes important for the later formulation of Christianity, this idea of the semen carrying the light particles. They ejaculate, it goes into the ground, and up spring these little plants. The other female demons, on the other hand, look up and they see this Holy Spirit in the guise of kind of Adonis figure, and they spontaneously give birth to these little monstrosities who go crawling on the ground and immediately start eating up the plants that have sprung up from the ejaculated semen of the other monsters. Now they have the light particles within them. So you begin to get the sense of layers and layers and layers densifying over these light particles. They're becoming trapped. This is basically what we saw yesterday with Steiner. It's a variation of this whole mythology. So now you have these little beings who are wandering around with these particles of light trapped in their bodies. And now the sort of beings of darkness begin to get nervous about this, and they know that the kingdom of light wants these light particles back. So they say, well, how best can we keep these light particles trapped down here? And they think, well, let's create a primal couple who will represent the trapping of these particles of light. So they bring in this couple who then carves up these little monsters and they eat them. Now they have the particles of light within them, they perform sexual intercourse, and out comes Adam and Eve. And so they've gone through this long evolutionary fall in which they've gradually densified and captured particles of light within them. And so the difference of the fall in this tradition is that it isn't the result of man. It isn't the result of man's fall. It's something that's happened in the cosmos already, long before man appears on the scene. So the universe is fallen. And the way in which these particles of light are released is done in the Manichaean world through practices of asceticism. There was this sort of inner circle who were ascetics, who did not eat meat, who were vegetarians, and they could release particles of light by eating fruit. Fruit contained the highest concentration of these light particles, and eating fruit is liberating the light particles. They're filling up inside of you, so that when you die, your soul will go up to the moon, and the moon every month fills up because it's filling up with these liberated light particles that are gradually being restored to heaven. Then those light particles are shot back into the sun, and that's where they go, and that's how they get back to the kingdom of light, through the human participation of this liberation process, eating and fruits and vegetables and doing these other things. So it's a very weird, complex Steinerian system in many respects. And sexual intercourse is, of course, the process whereby new beings are trapped within matter. So ideally for the ascetics, you don't want to have sexual intercourse, but the outer group of the Manichaeans are able to marry and have sex and reproduce, but they can't be considered part of the inner elite circle if they're involved in the life process. So that's the Manichaean myth, and that gives you a sense of where Arthur Young is coming from with respect to this vision of the descent of light into matter. It's trapping, and ultimately it's, in that tradition, it has to figure out how to get out of matter through man's participation, and I guess indeed in Arthur Young it's sort of the same process. And so in Arthur Young, if we sort of imagine this V, and here we are back with Steiner's V, but it's a slightly different one, although it has the same basic connotation of gradual sinking, fall into matter, and release, is light is at the top here. Light is absolutely free, and there's a relationship between freedom and constraint. Light has 3 degrees of freedom and no constraint whatsoever, the way he maps this out. Light densifies, and I guess at a certain frequency will generate protons. Don't be afraid to help me out here, Don, if you need to. Light goes down into and produces